Good Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a great weekend. Browns are on to the playoffs. They will play Saturday in Houston against the Texans. First game of the NFL playoffs. Browns trying to get everybody ready.
All we could do today was go 1-0.
Go 1-0. That's it. That's the mentality.
Now that's a big one. You know why? Because it was the one that they had today. Guess what? Next one's the biggest game of your life. That's how it works.
It's something we preach here in Cleveland.
It's 1-0 every week. That's the mentality, man.
It's not flashy, but it works.
That's what we're about, man. Establish our identity.
You gotta find a way to go 1-0.
Look at this team.
When we do our job, we win.
Through the highs.
He got it! Ball game over! Browns win! Browns win!
And the lows. They've stuck together.
Grab a hand, grab an arm, grab a piece. We need it.
The Browns get in there, blow in, it's Myles Garrett. Throws for Ridley, picked off.
Some games were painful. We got banged up. But you know what? It's next man up.
Firing, and Joku caught it! Touchdown!
Let's keep going 1-0 every week, bro. When we play our brand of football, nobody can play with us.
That's what this is all about. You give it your all or you don't.
The Browns are going to the playoffs!
You've got to go 1-0, and that's how you win.
Nice job by the Browns. Let's welcome in Scott Patrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Scott, yesterday was, I don't even know if it was a preseason game. The best news of all, it seemed like the guys that got banged up, not too serious. And you know, the whole 1-0 next man up, I mean, that's playoff football. They've been doing it pretty much all season.
Yeah, it's interesting how that really stuck with this team. I mean, I don't think Kevin Stefanski invented 1-0. I've heard him say it more than anybody else that I've ever been around. But, you know, it started for me about mid-season. I really noticed the players kind of just parroting exactly what Stefanski was saying, whether it was 1-0 or just kind of the other phrases you could hear him and the coaches say in their press conferences. You could hear the players say it. And I took that as a real good sign of everybody's bought in. And for the organization to make this big deal about 1-0, it's just another kind of signal of that. And it was funny, we got back from Cincinnati late last night. I was with a couple other writers in the car, and we met in Berea, and you could see this giant 1-0 sign coming through the wall. So, like, they have it somewhere in their building just getting that message across to everybody.
Yeah, and you know what? When you go through what the Browns went through injury-wise, that's probably the best approach.
Well, yeah, and really, you know, I think it's human nature to think about going to the Super Bowl and winning your division and, hey, we've won 2 in a row, can we get to 4 in a row, whatever that is. But that doesn't do you any good, right? The focus in the NFL is to win that week, and that's all that matters. That's all you can control, and it's trite and it's cliche and you get sick of hearing it. But I really do think that is the right philosophy, maybe the only philosophy to have, and it's applicable in the regular season, and then it's more applicable than ever when you get to the playoffs, when that's all that matters is win or go home.
I know you wrote an article. Obo Okunrankwo got some playing time, looked pretty good. Take us through that and what you found out in talking to him.
Yeah, well, I talked to him during the week last week. Just, it felt like he was done for the season, right? Torn pec. It put Maurice Hurst, the second on the sideline, right? He had surgery. He's done for the year. It just puts a lot of guys out. Jacob Phillips a couple years ago. But, and he wouldn't get into specifics. So I don't know if it's just partially torn or whatever, that he thinks he can try to play through it. And it took a while. He missed 3 games. He went and got some extra, some second opinions, and then came back and said, all right, let's give this a go. And he felt good in practice, he said. And then after the game, he said he felt fine coming through it. He said he had no limitations. The harness is the harness, whatever. You got to play through it. But he said he was in on rundowns. He was in on pass downs. And if he can be anywhere close to his normal effectiveness, right, is that third end, combining with Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith, and then you add Alex Wright to the mix, who has a sack in 4 straight games. when they go to that speed package, it's those four guys. Get Obo coming off the edge. If he can do whatever he needs to do, right? Dip or throw the guy out of the way, whatever he can do with that injured pec, if he can be effective enough, that's a real bonus because they miss him. He's a number 3 edge rusher. They went and paid him good money in the offseason. So that's a boost. And the fact that he felt good after the game was a really good sign.
So Ryan Wilson from CBS Sports talked about what he sees when he looks at this Texans-Browns matchup.
When you talk about the Texans, is that C.J. Stroud, the moment is not too big for him. He is not the best rookie quarterback in the NFL. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL with the way he has played. Missed 2 games because of the concussion, came back this week and looked as sharp as ever. Helped that team beat a division rival to, in fact, win the division themselves, thanks in part to the Jaguars losing. By the way, we know what happened the first time in this matchup, but you wonder if the Cleveland Browns were hoping the Jaguars to win so they could go to Jacksonville and whoop up on them, because I don't think that game would even be close. I think this will be a much tighter affair. I think second time around, C.J. Stroud, D'Amico Ryans, and that crew is going to be ready, and it's going to be fun to watch because I would not be surprised if the Texans find a way to win, and this might be the toughest matchup for a Browns team, but, I can't believe I have to say this. Never sleep on Joe Flacco.
Scott, and I've seen the Texans play quite a bit. I watched all of the Colts game. C.J. Stroud is impressive. I'm not downgrading what he did. He really didn't put the ball in harm's way at all in that game, in what was, in essence, a playoff game. Historically, rookie quarterbacks in the NFL, and we'll talk about it coming up, we'll give you the numbers and all this, they struggle. And Jim Schwartz, with a rookie quarterback in a scheme that he's seen a little bit of, man, I like the Browns' chances in that matchup.
Yeah, I think the guy makes a good point that the way Jacksonville was playing, that seemed like the preferable matchup. Now, I kept thinking Trevor Lawrence might get back to being Trevor Lawrence, and, Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl, whereas, C.J. Stroud and D'Amico Ryans are rookies, right? So I kind of thought Jacksonville might have been a tougher matchup, but just having looked at how each team played this weekend, you would go, yeah, Houston's tougher. C.J. Stroud is playing at a higher level than Trevor Lawrence. But I kind of agree with you, Dave. I think C.J. Stroud is having an unbelievable year, and the fact that he doesn't turn the ball over is really impressive and really impressive for a rookie. That doesn't mean he can't turn it over in a game. Doesn't mean if Myles Garrett's bearing down on him, he won't fumble, he won't throw it up for grabs, or Denzel Ward will make a great play. I think it's more about how good I think the Browns are on defense as opposed to C.J. Stroud. And I also don't think Stroud has a ton of weapons around him. They lost Tank Dell for the season. Nico Collins had a huge game against Indy, so he's scary, and they have a good tight end. But they feel a little thin there, and that puts more pressure on Stroud.
Yeah, and again, they made the right. Tell me which rookie quarterback I want. I want C.J. Stroud every day of the week. It just goes to show you how ridiculous some of the stuff that comes out when somebody's being, scouted that intensely for a quarterback is. Because, he looks really good. But again, let's just wait and see what happens. Joe Flacco. Now there's a guy that has played 15 playoff games. Take a look at this. First 5 were kind of rough. Now, he did win one as a rookie. He did win a playoff game as a rookie. But first 5 games for Flacco were pretty rough, but here are his last 10. 7-3, including AFC title, Super Bowl win. 60% completions. You see 2,500 yards. 24 touchdowns, just 4 picks. Average game, 256, 2.4 touchdowns, 0.4 interceptions. Again, if you're getting that average game in the playoffs from Joe Flacco, you got to feel pretty good about, the Browns against anybody, really.
No, there's no doubt. And 3 things kind of stand out to me. Even when he's the quote-unquote rough games, he still went 3-2. Now, I know quarterback wins. His quarterback record is we can argue about that stat, but it wasn't like he was killing his team and they weren't winning games. Then he gets on that run, and, the fact that he throws for whatever it was, 260-something, and he's on some streak of 250-plus, it's 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 11, which even when he was on these bad Jets teams losing games, he still threw for a bunch of yards, which gives you the chance, right? It moves the ball up and down the field. It gives you a chance to score points, and that's hugely important. And then the 0.4 interceptions in that playoff run up there, that's the big concern. right, is he's thrown a lot of picks. Throughout his career, he's thrown a good number of picks, and I think that comes with the type of player he is, the type of quarterback he is. Not afraid to throw in a tight window, throws downfield a lot, which increases the chance of interceptions. And this year, he's thrown a good amount since he's been with the Browns. But if he's more careful with the ball in the playoffs and throws one or fewer, I give the Browns a really good chance to win these games because I have little doubt that he's going to put up big numbers throwing the ball, right? So if he's throwing for 280 with 2 touchdowns and he throws 0 or 1 interception, I like the Browns' chances.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing is, if the interceptions don't give short fields or pick sixes, not all interceptions are created equal in the playoffs. If you're giving the other team a long field because it's third down and you're trying to fit, that's different than if you're turning it over inside your half of the field in the playoffs as well. This is kind of interesting as well. Browns have granted the Washington Commanders permission to interview Assistant General Manager Glenn Cook as their head of football operations. Browns' other assistant GM, Catherine Reich, expected to get some GM interviews too by teams. Again, it's an indication of how well thought of the front office is. And if somebody hires one of those two, it's a third-round compensatory pick.
Yeah, it is interesting. It speaks to where this organization is. There's no doubt about that. And both of them have had interviews for GM jobs in the past. I know Catherine's new to the Browns, but, Glenn Cook has interviewed, I think it's the last couple of years for GM jobs. Talk to him. He's an impressive guy to talk to. But I think it's kind of interesting. Right? Obviously, they played big roles in this organization. It's not just Andrew Berry making all these decisions. So I got buddies texting me like, oh, man, all the draft picks you could pick up. Well, I get that, and that's why there's incentive. And, I think the Browns would, be, good. They would accept the draft picks and be happy about them and want their people to move on and get better jobs. But there's also a party that says, well, they're part of the reason why we won. Like, how do you weight that against a draft pick? I just think it's kind of an interesting discussion. But I expect them to be involved in whatever GM jobs come up.
Yeah, and again, it speaks to the structure that the Browns have. Other teams don't go and get front office people from organizations they don't think are well run. I guess that's, and we've already seen a couple of the Browns from this regime move on. So that's where the organization is, to your point. Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, BrownsZone.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk more about the Browns in the playoffs, a game Saturday afternoon to get things rolling.
Ooh, holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This is Richard calling from Canton, Ohio. Like the show, support the show. I would actually say running the ball. This is what this Browns team is built on, running the ball and putting the offense in good situations, especially on third down. We've got a very good quarterback with a strong arm like Joe Flacco and who is accurate. And also with Deshaun Watson, hopefully he gets healthy. So that way, whatever magic we have this season that we got going on right now, we'll go ahead and translate to the 2024 season. Thanks again, and go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, the running game got back on track against the Jets a little bit. It's kind of a work in progress. If they can find a way to run the ball effectively with Joe Flacco, they're going to be a real tough matchup for anybody.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And they've won without that balance, right? They won 4 or 5 games without 100 yards rushing, and it just was Joe Flacco throwing it all over the place and, having success that way. But I think you get in the playoffs, I think you don't want to put all that pressure on Flacco. You want to be able to have balance and to take some pressure off Flacco and the receivers and make, the defense respect what you're doing both ways and make them respect the play-action passing game. So I thought that was a good sign to see what they did against the Jets. Now, the Texans are good against the run, and they were good against the Browns on Christmas Eve, even though the Browns went up and down the field. They didn't run it very well. But if you watch that Colts game Saturday night, Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss had some success. Now, there were some runs for no gain and some negative runs, but they had some big ones too. So I think the Browns have to stick with it. But I don't think that they win. They're going to win because they run at 100 for 150 yards or 200 yards. I kind of disagree with the caller. I don't think they're built on the run game right now. It's because they don't have Nick Chubb. It's because they don't have their starting tackles. I think they've kind of morphed into this passing team with Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper and David Njoku, but you just need enough balance and threat from the run game to make it work best.
Yeah, I think if you can run the ball a little bit, the turnovers go down because they can't drop into coverage. They can't, shrink the windows. They can't do a lot of things that are leading to those turnovers. Stephen A. Smith, ESPN's First Take, about Joe Flacco and the Browns in the playoffs against the Texans.
Joe Flacco, when he won a Super Bowl, C.J. Stroud was 11 years of age. 40 quarterbacks, believe it or not, the hat just fell off her head. I don't know how that happened, but that's a different subject for another day. The 40 quarterbacks with at least 5 starts this season, Flacco leads them all with 323 pass yards per game. This man is 4-1 record with 13 touchdown passes. This is Joe Flacco is on his couch.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a franchise that gave Deshaun Watson, a former Texan, $230 million guaranteed. And Flacco comes off his couch, the 4th quarterback for the Cleveland Browns this year, and leads them to the playoffs. Yo, bro, with that defense, Cleveland.
Thank you.
But I'm saying Cleveland could get to the Super Bowl. I don't believe it. Yeah. I got the Ravens. But if there's a team that could knock them off, it is Cleveland. Why? Because Joe Flacco is flinging that football.
Yeah, and we know he's a different animal even from the regular season to the postseason. Well, the thing that concerns me is his turnovers.
Okay.
He's a volume turnover guy.
And again, I get the concern with the turnovers. I think the way you get around that, if you can run the ball a little bit effectively.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that helps. I think if the defense isn't focused just on trying to get an interception or, get to Flacco and, like you said, dropping into windows where they think Flacco's going to throw it. I think that helps. I would also say this. I went back and watched that Christmas Eve game against the Texans. Flacco throws 2 picks. One is a deep corner route where he takes a shot to Marquise Goodwin. He just underthrows it a bit. It's almost like a punt. Goodwin really doesn't go up and fight for it. He thinks it's going to go past the defender. So if he'd gone up and broken it up or, made a jump ball catch, we're looking at it differently. And then the second pick was when they didn't have a kicker and he throws it in the end zone right before the half. So, not all interceptions are created equal. Kind of when I think back of the picks he's thrown, the one against the Rams in his first game was a bad one. He shouldn't have thrown over the middle late like that. But even the one against the Jets, it was a pick 6. The guy made an unbelievable play, Jermaine Johnson. Flacco knew exactly what he was doing. He thought he got the guy to jump. He thought he was going to get around him, and the guy makes a great athletic play. So, yes, you have to be worried about that, but I don't feel like he's making a ton of bad decisions out there.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. You would hope he doesn't try to throw it around a guy like Jermaine Johnson in the playoffs, but yeah, I agree with you. So I referenced rookie quarterbacks postseason debut. Take a look. They're 10-14 overall. So rookies 10-14 in that. Brock Purdy last year, 332 yards, is the most ever by a rookie quarterback making his debut. And when you look at the guys that have won, there have only been 2 that have thrown for over 200 yards. 3 of them, actually, that have won. Aaron Brooks threw for over 200. Most of you see the 266 there. Most of the rookie quarterbacks who have won in those first games in the playoffs, those 10 of them, 8 of them have had really good running games and have thrown for under 200 yards in that win. So, again, Texans' running game is not great. It's gotten better with Singletary. But what I would say is it's really tough for a rookie quarterback to go out and win a postseason game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And one of the things that graphic shows is you have to have help, right? You can win a game without throwing for a ton of yards, but your defense has to get turnovers or play really well. Yeah, you need some help in the run game, right? So if you're asking a rookie quarterback, to throw for a ton of yards, that's a big ask. And things do change in the playoffs, right? And it's not like it's not like the Browns is an organization or Cleveland is a fan base. We don't have a whole lot. There's not a lot of experience, me as a writer, like in the playoffs, right? We had the 2020, and that was it. And then before that, it was 2002. So you got to remember, things change, right? Amari Cooper says it all the time. Game plans get so much tighter in the playoffs, where teams say we're going to take this element away and make a team beat us with a different way, a different person. And you see that to some extent in the regular season, but not with the same intensity. So things change. The defenses get more complicated. The coordinators bring out all kinds of tricks. So I think that's why it is harder for a rookie quarterback to have that kind of success.
Yeah, the focus of Jim Schwartz is going to be, let's not let C.J. Stroud beat us. I mean, that if you look at the Texans, and it's, this guy's going to be Rookie of the Year. He just is. And he's good, but again, he's still a rookie. Houston radio host Landry Locker, Texans receivers, talking about that. This from the locker room featuring Landry Locker.
The Texans wide receivers. Nico Collins, great game yesterday. He had 195 yards. It was an epic day. The rest of the receivers combined had 2 catches for 11 yards. Noah Brown, he was out. Robert Woods, he tried to play. He was unable to go. You would like to get at least one of those guys back. I would think that they think that both of them have a chance to play, but the Texans are going to need more playmaking at wide receiver, because the Colts secondary, it is a very young, inexperienced secondary. You're going to be facing the Cleveland Browns defense that is a mofo in the trenches and much better than what we saw from the Colts yesterday. So the state of the Texans wide receivers would be something to keep an eye on.
And when you look at that, Scott, their secondary, the Browns secondary, is as good as any in the league.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I'm trying to work on a big story about just how good that cornerback group is. And Denzel Ward's back, and he says he's feeling real, if not 100%, real close to it. Thinks he can tackle again after that shoulder injury. We know how well Martin Emerson Jr. has played. I think Greg Newsome has bounced back remarkably after that tough game in Denver and has got his hands on a lot of balls. Now, we saw Nico Collins open that game against Indianapolis. He just ran by the corner. And that can happen, right? If you're going play action, man-to-man, like the Browns like to play, you can give up a play here or there. But I think we've learned that this group of corners in this defense is not going to give up a bunch of drives, is not going to give up a bunch of catches, which is why I like really any matchup, when you talk about corners versus receivers. But I really like it when it feels like Collins is the only real wide receiver threat for those guys.
Yeah, I agree that, any of the three of them, you can mix and match however you think is to your advantage if you're Jim Schwartz, because all three of those guys are really good. Scott Patrick and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit about the AFC North, how good the division the Browns play in has been.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Patrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. Fire everyone. Cut Flacco. Fire Andrew Berry. Sell the team. This was a travesty. Nah, I'm just joking. AFC North, first division since the merger to have all 4 teams finish with winning records. Victory lap for the mighty North Division. It's only right that 3 of the teams make the playoffs. Texans now have CJ back, so this game will be much tougher. Can't look past them at all, but this is our time. In 2020, we were just happy to make it. Now Browns have to make some serious noise. Dog pound coming to H-Town. Woo, woo. Let's go, Cleveland. Cleveland versus the world.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, take a look at this. This is kind of interesting. AFC North becomes the first division since 1935 to have all teams finish above 500. They were 31-13 outside of division play, which means that's a 70% winning percentage. So they beat up on each other, but that's how good the AFC North was this year.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Dave, I want you to tell me 8 teams that played in 1935 and what division they were.
Yeah.
I mean, the Browns were 11 years away from being in a different league in 1946 or 1935. So, just since the merger in itself is an impressive stat, right? I can relate to that. To me, it's crazy impressive, but it also proves or reinforces everything we talked about, right? How many times did we talk in July and August about how good this division was going to be? And I don't know if we talked about all 4 having winning records. We may have.
Yeah.
We may have said that. I know we talked about 3 teams getting to the playoffs. I thought Pittsburgh was going to have a winning record but not get to the playoffs. So it's one of those things where I think we actually got it right because we're so familiar with this division. And what's impressive is Pittsburgh does what it does to get to the playoffs despite, the crappy quarterback situation. And then Cincinnati struggles to begin with, but then they rally behind a backup quarterback and get to 9 wins, and there's something to be said for that too.
Well, think about it. The Browns started 5 quarterbacks. The Steelers started 3. Now, some of it was injury related, some of it was just bad quarterback play related, and the Bengals didn't have their MVP quarterback candidate for a good chunk of the year, and still everybody's above 500.
Exactly. It shows you how deep it is. And that record against outside opponents really drives that point home.
All right. So 3 quarterbacks in the last 50 seasons have led the NFL in passing yards per game and passing TD to interception ratio in a single year. Joe Montana, 1989. Tom Brady, 2007. C.J. Stroud in 2023. 273.9 yards a game, 23 touchdowns, 5 picks. If you're a rookie quarterback and you're on a list with Joe Montana and Tom Brady, you're playing pretty well.
Yeah, that list is crazy. I had looked up, I was writing something about the top 5 or 6 Texans to keep an eye on. So I looked up Stroud's stats, and he's still, top 10 in the league in passing yards. But that's without, even with missing a couple games. So I had not noticed that yards per game stat, and I knew how good the interceptions were. See, I don't want to ruin it for the audience, but you got to get a little rundown. And I saw that thing, and I was like, oh, my gosh, looked it up, added it to my story because that stat is as good as anyone you'll find to show you how well that he's played.
Yeah, and, I keep going back to all the crap that comes out of the combine during the you remember the thing that he doesn't process information well? Right. That's why everything you hear leading up to the draft, and we're still going to hear it, take it with a grain of salt. Look at what the guy does on the field, and that's a pretty good indication, especially at the quarterback position.
We're right. And how much Carolina must be kicking itself, right? To trade that pick, to trade Bryce Young instead of C.J. Stroud. And, and who knows, Young might become great, right? You can't make these decisions after 1 year. But he's not as big. He doesn't throw it as well, right? His arm's not as strong. C.J. Stroud's probably just as good an athlete, if not better. There's a lot of reasons to like Stroud in that matchup. And there were during the draft process, right? So, I think the Texans, if they had the number 1 pick, would have taken Stroud ahead of Young. It kind of fell into their lap. And, you watch the game Saturday night. He stood in the pocket with guys around him and made good throws, which is a huge sign for a quarterback. And, when you talk about the Browns defending him, he doesn't run a ton, but they have to be aware of that because he's a really good athlete. He can run, and those off-schedule, those third down conversions when he scrambles, like that's something they need to be wary of. Because that can make the difference in a tight ball game.
All right, so this from Dan Murphy with the Browns. 2023 Browns defensive ranks. 270.2 yards allowed per game, first in the NFL, fewest since the 14 Seahawks. 29.1% third down conversions, first in the NFL, best since the 19 Patriots. 253 first downs allowed. First in the NFL, 45 better than the second-place Jets, 164.7 passing yards allowed per game. First in the NFL, Browns lowest since 1977. Of all of those things, Scott, the thing that is most impressive, I think, is the third down conversions, because 29.1%, that means more than 2 out of 3 times teams aren't getting a second set of downs.
Right. And it's all tied in, right? The lack of first downs, the third down conversion rate. But it shows, I mean, they've been that number like all year. It's not like it started poorly and then they got better, or it started great and then they had to drop off. Like, they've just been good all year long. And those are huge stats. Like, that's third down, get off the field. How many times have we heard former coordinators talk about, oh, we played well, but we could not get off the field? The Browns are getting off the field. And I don't know if that was one of the stats, but I think they lead the league in 3 and outs, or are up there in 3 and outs. Like, those change. It doesn't allow the other team to get any momentum. It doesn't let the other team's defense rest, which ties into your offense playing better. All of it.
Yeah, without question. So the question I have, what do you think Jim Schwartz does with C.J. Stroud? Do you go after him? Do you just? I think you mix up and do a bunch of things and find out what he is having trouble with.
Yeah, I like the mix-it-up idea. I don't think Schwartz is going to get away from they play man and they're going to keep playing man. I think he's going to get away from our front 4 attacks. But could you see a couple of zone pressures where Miles or Zadarius Smith or Obo drops into coverage, try to confuse the rookie? Could you see a lot of show pressure and either bring it or drop out, right? Just something to give C.J. Stroud that moment of hesitation that can make the difference. It can make the difference in the pass rush getting there. It can make the difference in indecision and him throwing into a window and possibly throwing an interception, right? Like, all those things can happen if the quarterback doesn't have a clear picture of the defense. And so I think that will be Schwartz's biggest focus. I think he'll bring pressure because that's what he likes to do, whether it's, blitz or just trust your front 4. But I do think there'll be more attempts to confuse.
Scott Petrick and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from D'Amico Ryans about the Browns-Texans matchup. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Earlier today, D'Amico Ryans, head coach of the Texans, talked about that first Browns-Texans matchup in the rematch coming up.
For us, looking back at our first game versus the Browns, it was a lot of self-inflicted penalties. We made big plays. They were negated by penalties or just mishaps on our part. So, again, we have to play clean football versus a really good team. You can't go out and make mistakes, right, or they'll capitalize on it. And they've shown that time after time. And that's on the defensive side. We gave them too many explosive passes. And Amari had an outstanding game. Watching it again, he had some of the best catches I've seen all year, right? Even though guys were in coverage and in position, he still made unbelievable catches. He had an outstanding game. So we have to be in position to cover him better. We have to be able to make plays, right, to get off the field on third down as well.
And Scott, you had alluded to it. Texans are pretty good in run defense. Pass coverage not as good, and there's a lot of ability to do run after catch with this defense.
Yeah, Troy Aikman brought that up in the broadcast Saturday. Is they missed some tackles, right? They turned short plays into big gains. And the Browns have done that, obviously, with David Njoku. They can do it with Kareem Hunt or Jerome Ford out of the backfield. It's going to be interesting. You know, Ryan just talking about the penalties on offense, and they did. They took away, like, a screen pass, a couple of plays that they had, you know, big gains, and then holds brought them back. And, you know, against this defense, you can't get in second and long and third and long. Jim Schwartz will just go eat you for lunch. So you have to stay ahead of the sticks if you're the Texans, and they struggled with that. And obviously it was Case Keenum, not C.J. Stroud, so that could change. But on the other side of the ball, I'm interested to see what Ryans does. Like, he wants to create pass rush. He wasn't pleased with the pass rush in the first matchup. Now, they didn't have Will Anderson Jr. and Jonathan Grenard left early, so that should change things, right? They're both dealing with ankle injuries. Grenard hasn't played since the Browns game. So, you know, is he back? Who knows? Is he 100%? Probably not. But at least having those guys could change the pass rush for the Texans. But then what do they do in coverage? Do they take Derek Stingley Jr. and put him on Amari Cooper all game? Now, he covered him some in that first matchup, and Cooper had success. But the two biggest Cooper catches were not against Stingley, who's a number 3 pick in the draft a couple years ago. But if they do that, that's not how the Texans normally play. So then are they out of their comfort zone? Plus, they play a lot of, like, the quarters defense, and the Browns just thought they could pick it apart last matchup, right? Like, they went into the game and said, okay, we can throw deep to Amari Cooper, and we're going to have success. And you saw it from the first play. So how do the Texans adjust, or can they? Or they just do what they do, and it's a bad matchup, and the Browns can throw deep again. Like, to me, that's something to watch, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns tried to take deep shots again.
Yeah, the other thing is if they come after Flacco too much, you get to the screen game, and we've already said run after catch is something that haunts this. So there's a couple of ways to go for this offense. All right, so Wildcard weekend preview, this from ESPN.com, Browns and Texans. Reason for hope, the Browns roll into the postseason with arguably the NFL's top defense, Myles Garrett, one of the league's elite pass rushers, Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, locked up opposing wideouts all year. Cleveland's defense, a problem for any style of offense they'll play. Reasons for concern, Browns have committed league-high 37 turnovers. They've somehow overcome it to this point, in part because the Browns' defense has forced the 6th most turnovers at 28. A stat to know, and this one's kind of interesting, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, second in the league among linebackers' run-stop win rate, recorded an excellent 31% pass rate, 78 pass rushes this season. He's also, Scott, one of the leading guys in TFL's tackles for loss. So, again, that figures into Singletary and Dameon Pierce and those kind of guys with the Texans.
Sure, and even Stroud, right? They blitz him a lot. If you blitz JOK, you feel like he can break down and keep Stroud in front of him, make him get the ball out of his hands. He's not going to let Stroud get away from him and run away for a big gain. I think this is a JOK game. He's on turf. He's faster, even faster on turf. He's made so many impact plays this year. I've really been impressed with him. I think you can have a serious discussion about who's the most improved player on this team, and he's in that discussion. And the Pro Bowl alternate recognition that he got shows that, without a doubt in my mind. And then it's back to those turnovers, right? Like, they've overcome them all year, but at some point you got to stop turning it over. And if they win the turnover battle, then I'm pretty confident they'll win that game. If they lose it, then it becomes much more of a toss-up.
Yeah, and you could say that against any opponent with the Browns. Win the turnover battle, pretty confident they're going to win it. If they lose it, it becomes much more difficult. All right, before I let you go, what are some of the key matches, some of the things that you think will determine this wild card playoff matchup against the Texans?
I mentioned Anderson and Grenard. Those two guys against the backup tackles, right? It's Jerron Christian, it's James Hudson III. they've held up pretty well since they've taken over this full-time role. The coaches have helped them, and the coaches will have to help them again. But at some point, you got to block one-on-one, and they need to hold up in that matchup. So I'd watch out for that. And then, on the other side of the ball, it would be the off-schedule C.J. Stroud stuff, right? The stuff that you can't prepare for, that you have everybody where you think you want him to be, and then he extends a play and makes a 60-yard throw, or he scrambles for 35 yards and that changes a drive. Like, those are the things I'd worry about, and I think Jim Schwartz has to have that in mind. Almost like you play Lamar. I know he doesn't run nearly as much as Lamar, but in the playoffs, quarterbacks tend to run more. We saw it in the national championship or the playoffs last year with Ohio State, right? That's when he decided to run. That's what would worry me, is the off-schedule plays.
Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. As always, Scott, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out, BrownZone.com on the internet. He is also the Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Jared Mueller from Dogs by Nature straight ahead. Stay with us on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright. No fair. It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million.
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back!
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Jared Mueller from Dogs by Nature. Jared, I know you wrote an article. Will the fatal flaw derail the Browns from their playoff dreams? Take us through that article and kind of what you're thinking with that.
I think the reality is that Joe Flacco, P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Deshaun Watson have really struggled turning the ball over, and so it's really vital in the playoffs, in that postseason. The game is a little different, right? We know it in the NBA, we know it in Major League Baseball, and we know it in the NFL. Just what works during the regular season doesn't tend to work in the postseason. And so making sure that they don't turn the ball over. Listen, he can have one. He just can't have two or three. And unfortunately, the Browns have basically led the league in turnovers all year. Now, the defense has gotten their turnovers as well, but it's just vital that they can just be a sustainable unit on offense, not turn the ball over, run the ball a little bit more, even though Houston is a better run defense than a pass defense. Joe Flacco does not need to score 40-some points, 38 points to beat this team. He needs to control the game by not turning the ball over.
Yeah, we talked a little bit earlier. Not all turnovers are created equal. Don't give them the short fields. If it's a third down and you're trying to fit it into a tight window as you're at the 20-yard line that's a little different than, hey, have the ball at the 40-yard line and a 40-yard. offenses are going to have a tough time putting together 70, 80-yard drives, more than 2 of them against this Browns defense. So don't help them.
Absolutely. If it is 3rd and 12 and you're at the 35, 40-yard line and Joe wants to uncork one of those deep balls to the other 15, 10, 20-yard line, all the more power to you. But it's just about being smart with that. Even one of his throws to Amari Cooper, he talked about not really recognizing that third defender was over on the right-hand side. So some of those, while it was a really great touchdown and, Cooper, tiptoed the sideline, a little bit concerning that he said, I didn't really realize there was a defender over there.
All right, so take a look at this, and I know you brought this up. Rookie quarterback coach combinations to make the playoffs. 2023, the Texans with DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud. 10-7 record. They're the only team to win their division. Back in 2012, Chuck Pagano, Andrew Luck, they were 11-5. Playoff finish, wildcard round. 2009, Rex Ryan, Mark Sanchez, 9-7 record, went to the conference championships. 2008, John Harbaugh and Joe Flacco, 11-5, went to the conference championships. 2008, Mike Smith, Matt Ryan, 11-5 record, playoff finish in the wild card round. Take us through. I know you, again, this is something you want to talk about. It's rare that rookie head coach, rookie quarterback. If you're a Texans fan, you should be thrilled because you look at those. Andrew Luck, Joe Flacco, Matt Ryan, those are guys that went on to have long, successful careers and made playoff runs.
Yeah, it's just something to be kind of aware of, is that talent isn't always the most important thing, right? And so, the fact that there's a rookie head coach, DeMeco Ryans has an NFL career, but he's a very young rookie head coach. C.J. Stroud, rookie quarterback, has played really, really well. He's not a good rookie quarterback. He's just a really good quarterback. And we saw what he did last year against Georgia's defense in the college playoffs. It's just a different beast. Being able to settle your nerves in front of a home crowd against a ferocious pass rush. As a head coach, when do you get aggressive? When do you trust your gut? When do you trust the numbers? As a quarterback, how do you try not to do too much, but also try to carry your team that really does need you to carry their team? And so I think it's just going to be interesting to see, are they the exception to the rule? They already are, right? Just making the playoffs as a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback, they already are the exception to the rule. But what else do you see when you watch them in those big moments, taking the timeouts, throwing the ball away, those kind of things? Do they show that veteran presence that they've shown all year? Or does the spotlight get a little too big for them?
Yeah, the other thing, and I mentioned this earlier as well, and I know you're heavily involved in the scouting combine and the process of evaluating talent. It just goes to show you how ridiculous some of the stuff is that comes out. C.J. Stroud was supposed to have trouble processing information. I don't see that on the football field this year at all.
No, not at all. And that's not at all what we saw in film or just talking to him. What's really interesting, you look back at it, and the decision to draft C.J. Stroud was reportedly forced by ownership. C.J. Stroud has the same agent and representative as Deshaun Watson, who forced his way out of Houston. And then the front office is who traded up for Will Anderson. That's who they want. Well, it looks like they were both right. And so at least so far, it's worked out. But it looked like a lot of dysfunction throughout the draft process, whether it was about C.J. Stroud or how the Texans ended up with 2 really, really good rookies with a 2nd and 3rd pick, that Arizona thought maybe they were going to get a really high draft pick when they traded down with Houston. Now they're getting a pick maybe in the 20s, which is not at all what they were expecting when they made that move at draft night.
And the Texans end up with probably the offensive and defensive rookies of the year with 2nd and 3rd picks. That hasn't happened.
That doesn't happen.
All right. I know you've also kind of talked a little bit preferred path to the Super Bowl for the Browns. So let's get a little crazy here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I talked about the last week and a half has been really the strangest, at least in my 40-some years of caring about this team, and then, over 15 years or so of covering it. it's really strange to have a lot of things to think about and nothing to care about in Week 18. So it's been some interesting conversation among Browns fans. Do you want to have to go through Baltimore? Is that kind of a thing you have to do to get to the Super Bowl? Is it something where can Cleveland host a game, right? Can Miami and can Pittsburgh, can one of those two teams also win in the wild card round? So the Browns, Cleveland can host a divisional playoff round. Just one of those kind of conversational pieces of watching how it all works out, because the NFL is not a bracketed playoff, right? So we don't know who the Browns, if they win, are going to play until the other games finish up. So it's just an interesting conversation. Would it mean more to knock off the Baltimore Ravens, the #1 seed, the former Browns, all of that kind of stuff? Would it mean more, or does it not matter? Making the Super Bowl, getting to pop that champagne, all of that, does it really matter, the pathway? It's just been some fun conversations among Browns fans, in this week and a half or so since Thursday Night Football that hasn't really mattered. It's been fun to think ahead a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? Just get there. Just get there.
Amen.
Jared Mueller from Dogs by Nature and I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear what some people that cover the Texans are thinking about this matchup. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dogs by Nature, a Houston radio host, Landry Locker, on the Browns and Amari Cooper this weekend.
The C.J. Stroud effect, that goes without saying. What will that look like? Will they be able to protect C.J. Stroud? But it's definitely going to be a different ball game. Now, something that's not necessarily as impacted, and the star of the game the last time these teams met, the Amari Cooper situation. How will the Texans handle covering Amari Cooper? He had 11 catches for 265 yards, 2 touchdowns in the last meeting. 11, 265, 2 touchdowns. How are the Texans going to handle that? D'Amico Ryans last time said, we don't have corners follow wide receivers. He said, quote, we don't do that. When asked why Derek Stingley wasn't matched up more on Amari Cooper. Now the corners, Steven Nelson left the game, came back in. He was hurt. The corners, the secondary's actually gotten a little bit more healthy, minus Jimmy Ward. But when it comes to the deep ball, Jalen Petrie got benched in this game. I'm sure Cleveland's going to try to pick on him. How are the Texans going to handle Amari Cooper? Because if he does what he did last time, it won't matter if C.J. Stroud's on the field or not.
And Jared, Amari Cooper is one thing. The other thing, they struggle with run after the catch, being the Texans' defense.
Yeah, they really do. And I think the interesting thing is Joe Flacco has nothing to lose. And so when you have a quarterback who has nothing to lose and he had talent like Joe Flacco, Amari Cooper, he's going to throw Cooper the ball. I don't care if they put Derek Stingley, who's a very good young cornerback, Petrie, who has been good until a little bit this year. They can double team Amari Cooper, and Joe Flacco's throwing him the ball. I think the other thing is David Njoku has obviously shown to be very good this year. The fact that Elijah Moore was back on the field after that concussion was shocking to most of us. And so just having those extra talented players, or even some of the drop-off passes to Ford, to Strong, or to Kareem Hunt, the Browns have a lot of ways to beat you. So I think if they want to load up on Amari Cooper, the Browns are going to find other ways to beat you, and Joe Flacco is smart enough to do that. So really, I don't think the Browns are very concerned about Cooper's production, because if he's not producing, he's opening up things for other people.
Yeah, the question is, if you're going to pay too much attention to him, what else are you going to be able to deal with? So this is kind of interesting as well. Joe Flacco in wild card games on the road, 4-0 in his career. His last 2 wild card round games at the Chiefs and at the Steelers, both wins for his team. 43 of 63, 68%, 524 yards, 8.3 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. So they averaged 262 and 2 touchdowns, no picks. If the Browns get 262, 2 touchdowns, and no picks from Joe Flacco, they're going to be awfully tough to beat by anybody.
I was going to say, if I get those statistics, I'm pretty sure I'm picking the Browns to make it to the Super Bowl, right? Like that is 262, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I'm not really sure I worry too much about what else is happening on the field. And it tells you a lot about Joe Flacco because 4-0, wins are a team stat, but the fact that he is 4-0 and with those statistics tells you that he knows how to settle down when he needs to, right? So when everybody else's heartbeat is going up, Joe Flacco's is going down. And that ability to relax, be calm in the pocket, be calm under pressure, reset yourself. We've already seen it some this year, but just to be able to kind of limit those turnovers in the biggest games, right? He has bet on himself time after time. It's why he got the big contract from Baltimore. It's why the conversation about him being elite ever started. And now we can have jokes about, an all-time Browns legend. Joe Flacco is obviously elite.
So this is kind of interesting, too. This is from CBSSports.com, ranking all 14 playoff teams. They have the Ravens 1, the 49ers 2, the Bills 3, the Chiefs 4, and the Cowboys 5. They have the Texans 9 and the Browns 10. Joe Flacco has been a story of the season, coming in off the street to chuck it left and right. Will it hold up against playoff defenses? Maybe, maybe not. Jim Schwartz owns stingy unit, maybe opportunistic enough to offset the QB's riskiness. I watched a lot of football, and I don't see the Browns as the 10th ranked. I think that's way too low. I mean, the Bills, the Chiefs, neither of those two teams are playing at the level that their reputation says they should be.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. So I'm a part of the National Committee for SB Nation, putting together our power rankings that I believe are coming out on Wednesday. And it was a lot of the conversation just talking about where to place some of these teams. Do you rely on the Bills and Josh Allen? He is talented. They've got Stephon Diggs, all of that. Do you just say, well, Kansas City has Patrick Mahomes and a really good defense? The reality is I think the Browns will end up ranked around 6 or 7 for our rankings. But really what you're seeing in some of these national kind of setups is you can't explain why the Browns are so good. It doesn't make sense. Yes, they've got a good defense, but in the NFL in 2023, 2024, defense doesn't win. They've got Joe Flacco. They've got Amari Cooper, but not sure. They're not really running the ball. So you're really seeing people aren't able to explain why this team won 11 games, could have won 12 if they cared at all about Week 18. So you're just seeing that kind of in the rankings. They can't point to one thing because the Browns are not one thing. They are a complete team, coached well, veteran presence, everybody doing the right things. Unfortunately, it's hard to really kind of put your finger on that. So you see them down here ranked at 10th. And most likely, if I had to guess, those rival Pittsburgh Steelers are down there at 14.
Yeah, and I would imagine the turnovers are another. A team that turns the ball over and you can't quantify why their offense is so good. I would agree with you. All right, before I let you go, key matchups that you think will determine this Browns-Texans matchup.
I really think it's going to be the linebackers for the Browns and the running backs and tight ends. C.J. Stroud is able to kind of pick things apart. JOK is really kind of playing a different position than he's played. And then you have Sione Takitaki. And I'm not sure after that if the Browns really trust any of their other linebackers to see the field. So is Juan Thornhill healthy enough? Is Grant Delpit able to come back? We should find that out sometime on Tuesday. Are they going to play 3 safeties? So I think really that middle of the defense for the Browns, Devin Singletary has been a really good pickup. Everyone, including myself for fantasy football, thought Dameon Pierce would really explode in this offense. Instead, it's Ben Motor, Devin Singletary, his nickname, coming over from Buffalo. So I really think it's going to be that linebacker safety group against the tight ends, the running backs. What does that middle of the field look like? Can the Browns kind of shut it down, limit those big plays, limit the run after catch, limit the broken tackles? That's really going to decide this game.
What on the Browns offense are you looking at?
I honestly, overly simplified, I think 1 or 2 big plays. Get that 50 to 60-yard chunk play. It's going to open up everything else, whether that's Cooper or whether that's Marquise Goodwin on a deep ball. if they get that 1 or 2 deep play, I think it really opens up everything else. And so you're probably going to see an attempt at that very early from Kevin Stefanski. Wouldn't shock anyone if you see that on the first play, some kind of play action pass, 2-man route with Goodwin and Cooper running some crossing deep path or, just one on a streak. I think that's really going to open up the offense if they can hit that 1 or 2 deep balls to allow everything up under the middle. David Njoku, the running game, Elijah Moore, those kind of players really to be able to excel because of the threat of the deep ball.
Jared Mueller, as always, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Jared.
Absolutely, Dave. Always good to talk to you.
Jared Mueller, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. Dogs by Nature. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.